I found them 3 weeks ago. 20 years of letters. 20 years of lies. 20 years of a life I could have had but never got to live. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what happened. I need to confess what I did, how I contributed to this mess, and why I can never forgive myself for the choices I made when I thought I knew the truth. My name is Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I just realized that everything I believed about my childhood, my father, and my mother was a carefully constructed fiction. Let me start at the beginning, or what I thought was the beginning. When I was 8 years old, my father left. That's what my mother told me. She sat me down at our kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, and explained that Dad didn't want to be part of our family anymore. He'd found someone else, someone without the baggage of a wife and kid. He was starting over, and we weren't invited. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The way the afternoon light filtered through our kitchen window. The taste of the hot chocolate she'd made me, trying to soften the blow. The way my stomach dropped when I understood that I wasn't enough to make him stay. Mom was devastated. I could see it in her eyes every single day after that. She worked 2 jobs to keep our small apartment. She never dated. She devoted everything to me, sacrificing her own happiness so I could have a decent life. She was my hero. I hated my father. Deeply. Completely. The kind of hate that becomes part of your DNA. Throughout my childhood, I'd lie awake at night wondering what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I good enough? What could I have done differently to make him want to stay? Kids think everything is their fault. I was no exception. Mom would sometimes catch me crying and hold me close. He didn't deserve us, she'd whisper. We're better off without him. And I believed her. How could I not? As I got older, the hurt transformed into anger. By the time I was in high school, I'd made a promise to myself. I would never be like him. I would never abandon the people who loved me. I would be loyal, faithful, devoted. That promise shaped everything about who I became. I met Sarah when I was 23. She was brilliant, funny, and saw something in me that I'd never seen in myself. We dated for 3 years before I proposed. She said yes immediately, crying happy tears that made me feel like maybe I was worth something after all. Mom loves Sarah. They had coffee together every Sunday. Sarah would help Mom with groceries, and Mom would share family recipes with her. It felt complete. Like the family I'd always wanted but never quite had. We set a wedding date for June. Everything was perfect. Then, 2 months before the wedding, I met Vanessa at a work conference. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to say I was drunk or confused or that she seduced me. That's coward talk. The truth is simpler and uglier than that. Vanessa paid attention to me in a way that felt intoxicating. She laughed at my jokes. She looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. And somewhere deep inside, that abandoned 8-year-old boy was still desperate to be chosen, to be wanted, to be enough. We had coffee after a panel discussion. Then dinner. Then drinks. You're getting married soon? She asked, twirling her wine glass. In 2 months, I said. I should have stopped there. I should have showed her pictures of Sarah and talked about how lucky I was. Instead, I said, sometimes I wonder if I'm making a mistake. The words surprised me as soon as they left my mouth. I hadn't known I felt that way until I heard myself say it. Cold feet? Vanessa asked, leaning closer. Maybe. I don't know. I just keep thinking about my dad, you know? He made a commitment and then bailed when things got real. What if I'm like him? What if I'm not capable of staying? She reached across the table and touched my hand. You're not your father, Marcus. You get to choose who you are. That night, I kissed her. And then I did more than kiss her. I went back to my hotel room at 3 a.m., sick with guilt and shame. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, disgusted. I'd become exactly what I'd sworn I'd never be. The next morning, I flew home. I told myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that would never happen again. I didn't tell Sarah. I couldn't. The words wouldn't form. But Vanessa started texting me. Casual at first, then flirty, then explicit. I should have blocked her number. I should have confessed to Sarah and begged for forgiveness. Instead, I responded. Not immediately. Not enthusiastically. But I responded. It went on for 6 weeks. Secret messages. Late-night phone calls when Sarah was asleep. Plans to meet up just to talk that we both knew meant more. I was living a double life, and the cognitive dissonance was eating me alive. During the day, I'd pick out wedding flowers with Sarah and taste test cakes. At night, I'd text Vanessa about how trapped I felt, how scared I was of repeating my father's mistakes. Vanessa understood, she said. She didn't judge. She just listened. That's what I told myself, anyway. The truth was that I was using her to sabotage my own happiness because some broken part of me believed I didn't deserve Sarah's love. 3 weeks before the wedding, Sarah found the messages. I came home from work to find her sitting on our couch, my phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Who is she?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My stomach dropped. My mouth went dry. "Sarah, Who is she?" I told her everything. The conference, the kiss, the texts, the phone calls. I watched her face crumble as each word landed like a physical blow. "Why?" she asked. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," I said, and it was the truth. "You did nothing wrong. This is all me. I'm broken, Sarah. I'm damaged. I'm my father's son." She stood up slowly, like her legs could barely hold her. "Don't you dare blame your father for this. He left when you were 8. You're 26 years old, Marcus. You made these choices. She was right. Completely, devastatingly right. "Get out," she said quietly. "Sarah, please. Get out." I moved into a cheap apartment that same night. Mom called, hysterical, demanding to know what happened. Sarah had already told her everything. "How could you?" Mom sobbed into the phone. "After everything we went through? After what your father did to us? How could you become him?" That cut deeper than anything Sarah had said. Because it was my worst fear confirmed. I was my father. The man I'd spent my entire life hating. The wedding was canceled. Sarah moved out of our apartment and back in with her parents. My friends took her side, naturally. I became a pariah overnight. The shame was suffocating. I'd wake up every morning and feel the weight of what I'd done pressing down on my chest. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I destroyed the best thing in my life because of some twisted self-fulfilling prophecy. Vanessa stopped texting after Sarah found out. Whatever fantasy we'd been living in evaporated the moment it became real. She was gone, and I was left alone with the wreckage. I threw myself into therapy. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, was patient but firm. "You need to understand why you self-sabotaged," she said during one session. "What were you really afraid of?" "Being abandoned," I admitted. "Like my dad abandoned me." "So you abandoned Sarah first?" The realization hit me like a truck. That's exactly what I'd done. I'd blown up my relationship before she could leave me. I'd taken control of the inevitable hurt by causing it myself. "I'm just like him," I whispered. "No," Dr. Reeves said. "You're different in one crucial way. You feel remorse. You're taking responsibility. That's growth, Marcus." But it didn't feel like growth. It felt like drowning. 6 months passed. I apologized to Sarah in a long letter, not asking for forgiveness but acknowledging the pain I'd caused. She never responded. I didn't expect her to. I focused on work, kept my head down, avoided relationships. I didn't trust myself anymore. Mom and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, but it was different now. Strained. She'd look at me sometimes with disappointment in her eyes, and I knew she was thinking about Dad, about how history had repeated itself. Doubt it was mild, thank God. She's recovering well, but it meant I needed to go through her house and make sure everything was in order in case something worse happened. That's when I found the box. I was in the attic, looking for her important documents. The box was tucked in the back corner, covered in old blankets and dust. It was wooden, with a small padlock that had rusted through. I opened it. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to me, in handwriting I didn't recognize. I pulled one out with shaking hands and read the return address. David Chan. My father's name. The date on the first letter was 3 weeks after he supposedly left. The postmark proved it had been sent and received, but never delivered to me. My hands trembled as I read. "Dear Marcus, I hope your mom gave you my last letter. I know this is confusing for you, buddy. I need you to know that I didn't want to leave. The judge said I couldn't see you right now, but I'm fighting to change that. I'm writing to you every week so you know I'm thinking about you. I miss you so much. I miss our Saturday morning pancakes and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love you, son. I'll never stop fighting for you, Dad." The letter slipped from my fingers. I grabbed another one, then another. Each one was a message from a father desperately trying to reach his son, explaining custody battles, apologizing for the divorce but never for loving me, sharing updates about his life and asking questions about mine that would never be answered. There were letters from when I was 8, 9, 10. They continued through my teenage years. The last one was dated 6 months before my wedding to Sarah. "Dear Marcus, You're 26 now, a grown man. I don't know if you'll ever read these letters, but I keep writing them anyway. Your mother has made it clear I'm not welcome in your life. I've respected that, even though it's killed me. I heard through mutual friends that you're getting married. I'm so proud of you, son. I hope you're happy. I hope you've built a good life. I want you to know that I never abandoned you. I fought for 2 years to get visitation rights, but your mother's lawyer was better than mine. She convinced the judge I was unstable, dangerous. By the time I'd saved enough money for a better lawyer, you were 11 and the judge said you were old enough to decide. Your mom said you didn't want to see me. Maybe that was true. Maybe you really didn't want to see me by then. I'll never know. But I want you to know this, not a single day has passed when I haven't thought about you, when I haven't loved you, when I haven't wondered who you became. I'm sorry I couldn't fight harder. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to break through your mother's walls. I'm sorry you grew up thinking I didn't want you. You were always wanted, Marcus. Always loved. Always enough, Dad. I sat in that attic for 3 hours, reading every single letter. 20 years of love that I never received. 20 years of a father who never stopped trying. 20 years of lies from the one person I'd trusted most in the world. I couldn't breathe. The attic felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing closer with each letter I read. My father hadn't abandoned me. He'd been there all along, reaching out, fighting, loving me from a distance while I hated him. And my mother knew. Every single day of my life, she knew. I gathered the letters carefully, placing them back in the box. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the worn envelopes. There had to be over 200 of them. 200 attempts to reach me that never made it past my mother's hands. I drove to the hospital where Mom was recovering. It was 9 p.m. Visiting hours were over, but I didn't care. I walked past the nurse's station with a box under my arm, ignoring the protests behind me. Mom was awake when I entered her room. She smiled when she saw me, that same warm smile that had comforted me through every childhood nightmare and teenage heartbreak. "Marcus, sweetheart," she said, her voice still slightly slurred from the stroke. "You didn't have to come so late." I set the box down on the table beside her bed, hard enough that it made a thudding sound. Her smile disappeared instantly. Her eyes went to the box, and I watched all the color drain from her face. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "The attic. I was looking for your insurance documents." My voice sounded strange, hollow, like it was coming from someone else's body. I found something else instead. She closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Marcus, I can explain." Explain? The word came out louder than I intended. You're going to explain 20 years of lies? 20 years of letting me think my father abandoned me when he was writing me every week? You don't understand, she said, opening her eyes. I did it to protect you. Protect me from what? From being loved? From being hurt? Her voice cracked. Your father left us, Marcus. He destroyed our family. He destroyed me. He didn't leave, I said, pulling out one of the letters. According to this, you divorced him. You fought for full custody. You made sure he couldn't see me. Because he was having an affair, Mom shouted, then winced, her hand going to her head. The outburst had clearly hurt her, but I couldn't find it in myself to care. Not right now. I stared at her. What? Your father cheated on me, she said, quieter now. Multiple times. With the woman from his office. I filed for divorce to protect both of us from his betrayal. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of her bed to steady myself. He cheated? Yes. And when I left him, he tried to manipulate his way back into our lives. Those letters, Marcus, they're manipulation. He's trying to make himself look like the victim when he's the one who destroyed everything. I looked down at the letter in my hand. The one where my father talked about Saturday morning pancakes and terrible jokes, not the one where he said I was always enough. Did you read these? I asked. Some of them. Enough to know they were poison. They don't sound like manipulation, Mom. They sound like a father who missed his son. That's what manipulators do, Marcus. They make you feel sorry for them. They twist the truth until you can't remember what really happened. Her eyes were pleading now. I kept those letters from you because I loved you. Because I didn't want you to be confused or hurt. I wanted you to have a stable childhood without his toxicity. But you told me he left us for someone else. You said he didn't want the baggage of a family. I simplified the situation for an 8-year-old child. Was I supposed to explain adult betrayal to you? Infidelity? The way your father destroyed our marriage vows? My mind was reeling. Nothing made sense anymore. Did he know about these letters? Did he know you were keeping them from me? Mom's silence was answer enough. He asked you, didn't he? He asked if I was getting them, and you lied to him too. I did what any mother would do, she said. I protected my child from a man who had already proven he couldn't be trusted. I pulled up the chair beside her bed and sat down heavily. My entire life felt like it was built on quicksand, and I was sinking fast. When I cheated on Sarah, I said slowly, you were devastated. You asked me how I could become dad. How I could do what he did. Because you did, she said. You repeated his mistakes. But I didn't know the full story, did I? You let me believe that his cheating led to abandonment, that he walked away and never looked back. You let me carry that fear my entire life, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's not my fault, Marcus. You made your own choices. Did I? I looked at her, really looked at her. Or did I make choices based on a lie you fed me for 20 years? You told me I was broken because of what Dad did. You told me I needed to be better than him. But you never told me he spent 2 decades trying to be in my life. He gave up eventually, Mom said bitterly. The letters stopped, didn't they? He moved on. Probably found some new family to replace us. I pulled out my phone. I'd done something in that attic that I'd never had the courage to do before. I'd searched for my father online. David Chan, age 56. Living in Seattle. I'd found his Facebook page, his LinkedIn profile, his entire life laid out in pixels and posts. No new family. No replacement son. Just a man who ran a small accounting firm and volunteered at a youth center teaching kids math. In one photo, he was wearing a t-shirt that said "World's Best Dad" with a coffee stain on it. The caption read, "Found this in a box while cleaning. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Maybe someday." That photo was dated 2 years ago. I showed Mom the picture. She looked at it for a long moment, then looked away. Social media isn't real life, Marcus. Anyone can pretend to be a good person online. Is that what you're telling yourself? I asked. That everything he wrote in those letters was pretend? That his love was fake? His love wasn't enough to keep him faithful to his marriage vows. And your love wasn't enough to let me know my own father. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and cutting. Mom started crying. Real, broken sobs that shook her whole body. I did my best, Marcus. I gave you everything I had. I worked 2 jobs so you could have a good life. I sacrificed everything for you. And you're going to judge me for one decision I made to protect you? One decision? I held up the box. This isn't one decision, Mom. This is thousands of decisions. Every time a letter arrived, you chose to hide it. Every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day, you chose to let me believe he didn't care. That's not one decision. That's a lifetime of lies. I was protecting you. No, I said, standing up. You were punishing him. And I was just collateral damage. I picked up the box and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Mom called after me, panic in her voice. I don't know. But I need to figure out who I actually am when I'm not living inside your version of my story. Marcus, please. Don't leave like this. I just had a stroke. I need you. I paused at the door. For a moment, I almost turned back, almost sat down and comforted her the way I'd done my entire life. But something in me had fundamentally shifted in that attic. You've had me for 32 years, Mom. Maybe it's time I figure out who my father is. I left her crying in that hospital room. The guilt was immediate and crushing, but I kept walking anyway. I drove home in a daze. When I got to my apartment, I spread all the letters out on my living room floor, organizing them by date. I read them in order, cover to cover, through the night. The early letters were full of explanations and apologies. My father acknowledged the affair. He didn't make excuses for it, but he provided context. My mother had struggled with severe depression after a miscarriage. She'd pushed him away emotionally for over a year. He'd felt alone in his own marriage and made a terrible mistake. He'd ended the affair immediately when Mom found out. He'd begged for forgiveness, suggested marriage counseling, promised to do whatever it took to rebuild trust. But Mom had already made up her mind. The divorce papers were filed within a week. In the custody battle, Mom's lawyer had painted my father as an unstable adulterer who might expose me to inappropriate situations. Dad's lawyer was fresh out of law school and overwhelmed. The judge granted Mom full custody with supervised visitation only. But Mom had refused to arrange any visits. She'd claimed I was too traumatized by the divorce, that seeing him would cause me psychological damage. Eventually, my father's visitation rights were revoked entirely. The letters showed his devastation, his confusion. His desperate attempts to understand what he'd done to deserve being completely cut off from his son. As the years went on, the letters changed. He stopped asking why and started just sharing his life with me. He wrote about his work, his hobbies, the books he was reading. He asked questions he knew I'd never answer. What's your favorite subject in school? Did you join any sports teams? Are you still afraid of thunderstorms? In one letter from when I was 13, he wrote, I saw a kid at the grocery store today who looked about your age. He was laughing with his dad about something, and I felt this physical ache in my chest. I wonder if you laugh like that. I wonder if you're happy. I hope you're happy, Marcus. That's all I've ever wanted for you. I put my head in my hands and wept. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. I cried for the father I never knew. For the relationship we never had. For all the Saturday mornings we missed and all the terrible jokes I never heard. But I also cried for my mother. Because somewhere in her pain and betrayal, she'd convinced herself that revenge was the same as protection. That isolating me from my father was an act of love rather than an act of cruelty. And I cried for myself. For the man I'd become based on a foundation of lies. For the way I'd sabotaged my relationship with Sarah because I was so terrified of being abandoned that I abandoned her first. When the sun came up, I made a decision. I was going to find my father. I sent him a message on Facebook. Simple and direct. Hi Dad, it's Marcus. I found your letters. All of them. Can we talk? I hit send before I could second guess myself. Then I waited. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number with a Seattle area code. My hand shook as I answered. Marcus? The voice was unfamiliar but warm. Hopeful. Terrified. Dad? Oh my God. I heard him choke back a sob. I can't believe it's really you. I can't believe I'm hearing your voice. We talked for 4 hours. He told me his side of the story, which matched what the letters had described. I told him about growing up thinking he'd abandoned me. About my relationship with Mom. About Sarah and how I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was so afraid of becoming him. But you're not me, Marcus, he said gently. You made a mistake, yes. But you didn't run from it. You owned it. That's the difference. I've spent my whole life tried not to be you, I admitted. And it turns out I didn't even know who you were. Your mother and I both made mistakes, he said. I betrayed her trust. She took away my son. We were two hurt people hurting each other, and you got caught in the middle. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for my part in all of this. Why did you stop writing? I asked. The last letter was 6 months before my wedding. There was a long pause. I had a health scare. Cancer. I thought I was dying, and I realized I needed to let you go. I'd spent 20 years holding on to hope that someday you'd read those letters, but hope was killing me. I needed to accept that I'd lost you and find a way to keep living anyway. You had cancer? Prostate cancer. They caught it early. I'm fine now, but it was a wake-up call. Life's too short to spend it writing letters to someone who will never read them. I'm reading them now, I said. All of them. How did you find them? I told him about Mom's stroke. About going through the attic. About the confrontation at the hospital. How is she doing? He asked. Your mom. Is she okay? The fact that he still cared enough to ask broke something else inside me. She's recovering. But I don't know if we're okay. I don't know how to forgive this. She was hurt, Marcus. Hurt people do terrible things sometimes. I should know. I hurt her first. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, he agreed. It isn't. But maybe understanding it is the first step toward healing. We made plans to meet. He offered to fly down the following weekend. I was terrified and excited in equal measure. When we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, surrounded by 20 years of stolen correspondence, and realized something profound. I'd spent my entire adult life running from a man who was running toward me the whole time. And I'd lost Sarah because I was so busy being afraid of becoming my father that I actually became the version of him my mother had created in my head. The irony was suffocating. I tried calling Sarah that night. Her number was disconnected. I found her on social media, but her profile was private now. I sent a message anyway. Sarah, I know I have no right to reach out. I know I hurt you beyond measure. But I just learned something about my past that explains a lot about why I sabotaged us. It doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses that. But I understand myself better now, and I wanted you to know that you deserve so much better than what I gave you. I hope you're happy. I hope you found someone who treats you the way you should have been treated all along. I'm sorry. For everything. She never responded. I didn't expect her to. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The following Friday, I drove to the airport to pick up my father. I'd seen pictures of him online, but I wasn't prepared for the reality of seeing him in person. He was shorter than I remembered. Grayer. He had my eyes and my smile. When he saw me waiting at arrivals, he stopped walking. Just stood there, staring, tears running down his face. I walked over to him slowly. We stood 3 feet apart, 20 years of absence stretching between us. "Hi, Dad," I said. He dropped his bag and pulled me into a hug. I stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed into it. He smelled like coffee and Old Spice. He held me like I might disappear if he let go. "I missed you," he whispered into my shoulder. "Every single day, I missed you." "I missed you too," I said. I just didn't know it. We spent the weekend together. He stayed at a hotel, not wanting to impose, but we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every day. We talked about everything. My childhood memories that he wasn't part of. His life in Seattle. The business he'd built. The family I'd never known existed. Turns out I had 2 half-siblings. Dad had remarried 7 years ago to a woman named Janet. She had twin daughters from a previous marriage, now in college. They knew about me. They'd always known. Jenny encouraged me to keep writing, Dad said over coffee, even when it seemed hopeless. She said someday you might need those letters, even if it took decades. She sounds wise. She is. She'd love to meet you, if you're ever comfortable with that. The thought of having a step-family was overwhelming, but also strangely comforting. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I just hadn't known it. On Sunday, before Dad flew back to Seattle, he asked if I'd visited Mom since our argument. I hadn't. I'd been too angry. Too hurt. "You should go see her," he said. "She's probably terrified right now. She should be. What she did was unforgivable." "Maybe," Dad said. "But she's still your mother. And she did raise you alone for 20 years. That matters, Marcus. Even if her methods were wrong, her love was real. How can you defend her after what she did to you? To us?" He sighed. "Because I'm not the person I was 20 years ago. I've had 2 decades to process my anger and hurt, to understand that people are complicated. Your mother did a terrible thing, but she also did 1,000 good things. Both can be true." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because he was right. That night, after I dropped out at the airport, I drove to Mom's house. She'd been discharged from the hospital 2 days earlier. I let myself in with my spare key. She was sitting in her living room, staring at an old photo album. When she heard me come in, she looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Marcus," she breathed. "You came back." "I needed time to process," I said, sitting down across from her. "I understand. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." We talked for hours. Really talked. She told me about the affair, about the betrayal, about how it had shattered her sense of self. She explained how every letter that arrived felt like Dad was trying to worm his way back into her lives, trying to make her look like the villain. "I convinced myself I was protecting you," she said. "But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was so afraid that if you knew him, you'd love him more than me. That I'd lose you the way I lost him. That's not how love works, Mom. I know that now. But fear doesn't listen to logic." I showed her pictures from my weekend with Dad. She looked at them with an expression I couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe. Or a grief for the family that could have been. "He asked about you," I said. "Asked if you were okay." "He did?" "Yeah. He still cares about you, even after everything." She wiped her eyes. "He was always too forgiving. I used to hate that about him. I think it's one of his best qualities, actually." We sat in silence for a while. Then Mom said, "What happens now?" "Between us? I don't know," I admitted. "I love you, Mom. But I don't trust you right now. And I can't pretend the last 20 years didn't happen just because you had good intentions. I understand. I need time. I need space to figure out who I am when I'm not living inside the story you created." She nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." I left her house that night feeling hollow. Not angry anymore, just empty. Like I'd been excavated and hadn't yet figured out what to fill the space with. Over the next few months, I built a relationship with my father. Video calls every week. Texts about random things. Plans to visit Seattle over the holidays. It wasn't perfect. 20 years of distance doesn't disappear overnight. But it was real. I also started seeing Dr. Reeves more regularly. Working through my abandonment issues, my fear of commitment, my tendency to self-sabotage. "You're not broken," Dr. Reeves told me during one session. You're a person who was hurt and responded to that hurt in human ways. The question now is, what do you want to build going forward? I thought about Sarah every day. About what I lost. About the man I could have been if I'd known the truth about my father from the beginning. But mostly, I thought about the letters. About the love that had been stolen from me and the hate I'd carried unnecessarily. One night, I was scrolling through social media and saw that Sarah had posted a photo. She was engaged. To a guy who looked kind and normal and nothing like me. The caption read, "Found someone who chooses me every day. I'm the luckiest." I stared at that photo for a long time. At her smile. At the ring on her finger. Happiness that radiated from her. Good, I thought. Good for her. I didn't comment. Didn't like the post. Just closed the app and sat with a feeling of loss. Some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals can't be undone. Some people don't get second chances, and maybe that's exactly what they deserve. 6 months after finding the letters, I moved to Seattle. It wasn't a dramatic decision. I didn't quit my job in a blaze of glory or burn any bridges. I just applied for a position at a firm near my father's accounting office, got the job, and gave my 2 weeks' notice. Mom took it hard. "You're moving across the country for him?" she asked when I told her. We were having coffee at her house, our weekly ritual that had resumed awkwardly after months of careful distance. "After everything I did for you? I'm not moving for him, Mom. I'm moving for me. I need a fresh start somewhere that doesn't remind me of Sarah every time I turn a corner." That was partly true. But we both knew the full truth. I was choosing my father in a way I'd never been allowed to choose before. "I see," she said, her voice tight. "So I lose you after all. Just like I always feared." "You're not losing me. Seattle isn't another planet. I'll visit. We'll video chat." "It's not the same." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But nothing is the same anymore, is it?" She looked down at her coffee cup, and I saw how much older she looked now. The stroke had aged her. Or maybe it was the guild. I couldn't tell anymore. "I wish I could go back," she said quietly. "I wish I could undo it all. But you can't. None of us can." I moved to Seattle on a rainy October morning. Dad helped me unpack boxes in my new apartment, a small one-bedroom in Capitol Hill. He didn't say much, just worked quietly alongside me, and I realized this was his way of making up for all the moving days he'd missed. All the milestones he wasn't there for. That evening, Janet came over with the twins, Amy and Sophie. They were 22, bright and funny, and they treated me like I'd always been part of the family. It should have felt awkward, but it didn't. It felt easy in a way that surprised me. "Dad talked about you constantly," Emma said while we ordered pizza. It was kind of intense, honestly. Like, we'd be watching a movie and he'd say, "Marcus would be about 16 now. I wonder if he likes this kind of movie." "Emma," Dad said, embarrassed. "It's true." Sophie chimed in. "You were basically our ghost brother." "I prefer the term mystery sibling," I said, and everyone laughed. Later that night, after they'd all left, I sat in my empty apartment surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe I could build something new here. Maybe I could become someone who wasn't defined by betrayal and fear. The first few months in Seattle were good. I threw myself into work. Started rock climbing at a local gym. Made friends who didn't know about Sarah or the letters or any of it. I was just Marcus, the accountant who'd moved from California, and that anonymity was a gift. Dad and I fell into a routine. Breakfast every Sunday at this diner he loved. We'd talk about work, sports, nothing too deep. We were still learning each other, figuring out how to be father and son after 20 years of being strangers. One Sunday, over pancakes that were nowhere near as good as he described in his letters, he asked, "Do you ever think about reaching out to Sarah again?" I told him the full story of what happened. How I cheated. How I destroyed everything. He'd listened without judgment, which somehow made it worse. All the time, I admitted. But what would I say? "Sorry I ruined your life. Glad you found someone better?" She's moved on. I need to accept that. Have you moved on? I pushed my eggs around on my plate. I don't think I deserve to move on. That's not how life works, son. You don't earn the right to heal. You just heal, or you don't. Deep thoughts from the pancake diner. He smiled. "I've had a lot of time to think about regret. About the mistakes I made with your mother. I spent years punishing myself, thinking I didn't deserve happiness after what I did. Then I met Janet, and she taught me something important. You can acknowledge your mistakes and still choose to live fully. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. What if the person you hurt never forgives you? Then you live with that. You carry it. But you don't let it stop you from becoming better. I wanted to believe him. But every time I thought about moving forward, I saw Sarah's face when she found those messages. The way her entire world crumbled in real time. Work became my escape. I took on extra projects, stayed late at the office, volunteered for the assignments no one else wanted. My boss loved it. My therapist, less so. "You're running again," Dr. Reeves said during one of our video sessions. I'd kept seeing her even after the move. Just in a different direction. "I'm being productive. You're being avoidant. There's a difference. What am I avoiding?" The question of whether you can forgive yourself. That stopped me cold. Because she was right. I was working 80-hour weeks so I didn't have to sit with the guilt. So I didn't have to face the fact that I'd become the villain in someone else's story. In December, Dad invited me to spend Christmas with the whole family. Mom called that same week, her voice small over the phone. "I know you're celebrating with your father this year," she said. "I understand, Mom." "No, it's fine. Really. You should be with him. You have a lot of lost time to make up for." The guilt was immediate and crushing. "You could come here. Spend Christmas in Seattle. I know it would be weird, but—" "No," she said quickly. "That's not appropriate. Your father has moved on. He has a new family. I'm not going to intrude on that. Then come visit after Christmas. Just you and me. We can do the tourist stuff." She was quiet for a moment. "You really want me to visit?" "Yeah, Mom. I do." She came the day after Christmas. I picked her up from the airport, and the hug she gave me was desperate. Clinging. We spent 3 days together. I showed her my apartment, took her to Pike Place Market, walked through the Space Needle. We didn't talk about the letters. We didn't talk about Dad. We just existed together in this new reality we were both trying to navigate. On her last night, we had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the water. She was quiet through most of the meal, just watching the boats go by. "I saw your father," she said suddenly. I looked up from my salmon. "What?" "Yesterday. When you were at work. I took a cab to his office." My stomach dropped. "Mom, why would you?" "He needed to see him. To apologize. After everything I did, he deserved that." "What did he say?" "He was kind." "Of course he was kind. That's who he is." She smiled sadly. "He showed me pictures of you two together. From the past few months. You look happy, Marcus. Really happy." "I am," I said. And I realized it was true. I was happy in a way I hadn't been in years. "I'm glad," she said. "I robbed you both of so much time. At least you have time now, Mom." "I was so angry for so long," she continued. "Angry at him for betraying me. Angry at myself for not being enough to keep him faithful. That anger turned me into someone I don't recognize. Someone cruel. You were hurt. Being hurt doesn't excuse what I did. Your father told me the same thing yesterday. He said he understood why I did it. But that understanding and excusing are different things. That sounds like him." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I need you to know something. I loved you. Every single day, I loved you. But I also used you. I turned you into a weapon against your father, and that was wrong. You deserve better than that. We all deserve better." "Yes," she agreed. "We did." When I dropped her off at the airport the next morning, she hugged me tightly. "Don't be a stranger," she said. "Even if I don't deserve your time, you're still my mom. That doesn't change. I know. But our relationship will never be what it was. I accept that." I watched her walk through security, this woman who'd raised me and lied to me in equal measure. I loved her and resented her. Forgave her and couldn't forgive her. Both things existed simultaneously, and I was learning that maybe that was okay. Back at work, I got assigned to a new project with a client who turned out to be a small nonprofit. They provided resources for children in foster care, helping them maintain relationships with biological family members when appropriate. The irony wasn't lost on me. I met with their director, a woman named Keisha who had more energy and passion than seemed physically possible. "We're trying to expand our reach," she explained during our first meeting. "Too many kids grow up thinking they're unwanted because the system failed them. But often, there are family members fighting to stay connected. We help facilitate that." "That's important work," I said, thinking about the letters. "It is. Kids deserve to know they're loved, even when the adults in their lives make everything complicated." Over the next few months, I worked closely with Keisha and her team. Hearing their stories, seeing the difference they made, shifted something in me. All these kids who'd been caught in the middle of adult dysfunction, just like I had been. One day, Keisha asked if I'd be willing to share my story at a fundraiser. Not the details, she clarified. Just the broad strokes. Parent alienation, rediscovering family, healing. It might help people understand why this work matters. I said yes before I could overthink it.